You're muted, Sam.
Sorry about that. Our first reader is Carla-Ann Makumbe. I don't know if she's here. Our first reading is by Carla-Ann. So if Carla-Ann, go ahead. Hello.
Hi, my name is Carla-Ann Makumbe. I am a Zimbabwean writer. I'm going to read my poem titled To the Angel Who Watches Over Me. I wrote this poem for my mom, my late mom. Some days the distance between us feels greater than an elephant, greater even than a stampeding herd. Some days I feel the world crumbling all around me, and there you are, not leaving any space between us, not even the eye of a needle. Some days I hear your voice in the wind, and only after looking for you in faces that couldn't possibly be yours does reality sink in. Some days you are the sun that breaks after the storm, and on other days I feel your absence. Cyclones and hurricanes ravage through my life. Some days you are a figment of my imagination, as I don't remember your touch. But on other days, you are present in everyone who ever met you. The glimpse of your face in my memory fragments my heart into shards, but your love restores me. Some days you're the cheerleader whispering in my ear to go on, and other days the deafening silence makes me aware of your presence. On those days, there is a dark hole within me, a vortex that sucks the life out of me. On those days, my voice just wants to be free and chant spells that would make witches cower. On those days, all things vile in me envelop me, and I am but a dark cloud, and then I think you once loved me. On those days, when anger subsides and loneliness dances around me, I acknowledge the orphan song and affirm you are with me always. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla-Ann. The next reader is Gertrude Mutsamwira. If you're ready, Gertrude, go ahead with your reading.
Once again, hello everyone. My name is Gertrude Mutsamwira. I'm a professional counselor and I'm 63 years old. I'm a mother of 3 grown-up children and I have 1 grandson. I'm so humbled to be amongst you, and I feel honored and privileged to be part of this team. Tell you what, at my age, I never thought one day something of this nature would ever happen to me, but it has. My journey and my desire to write poems started 45 years ago. That was in 1978. But I couldn't find myself to bring pen to paper because I had this fear of being judged negatively. And I didn't believe in myself. And I thought whoever was going to read whatever I'm going to write down was going, wouldn't find anything of substance. So I kept this within me, but it kept flowing. And during that time in 1978, I translated a Shona poem into English after I had written so many of my own, but then I didn't believe in them. And then it entered into the school magazine and I was really surprised. Anyway, fast forward, this COVID-19 era brought something in me that had been burning inside of me, and I had to unleash it through poetry. My poem is more like a narrative. I didn't do any training in poetry, but I just had to put my things raw as they were. So during that period of COVID, that was filled with sadness, loss of loved ones, loss of jobs, bringing anxiety and worry, gave me the opportunity to write what I felt, as it were. And this is where I had to write the topic that I'm going to read to you, to recite to you later on. But before I do that, I would like to thank Marian and Samantha for a wonderful job done. That was wonderful. You did, some things, as I'm talking to you right now, I've got goosebumps all over, because you didn't look at age. You just said Zimbabwean women, and I happen to be one of them. And thank you so much. I really appreciate for choosing 3 of my poems out of the 7 that I've sent to you. Thank you. I also would like to thank my children, Marshall, Wadzanai, and Rutendo, for the unwavering support that they gave me, because they knew I had something in me, but I never, like I said before, I didn't have it in me because of the fears that I mentioned earlier on. Thank you so much. And special thanks to Rutendo, who kept nudging me. That one you're seeing there, she kept nudging me, and she's the one who forced me, among some resistance, to get into this project. And look where I am today, something that I never thought would happen in my life. I would also like to thank my team members for your contributions. I am really looking forward to reading your poems. I am a work in progress, and I still have a lot to learn from you. And above all, I would like to thank the Almighty for giving me the gift of life and taking me to where I am today. Thank you so much. My dream has come true. Now, to the poem that I'm going to recite, Joblessness. You heard it. Now it's gone. That which you cherished and loved so dearly is gone. Gone it has. You don't have it now. It's hard to comprehend, hard to come to terms with and fathom it. It is hard to accept. The thought of it bounces on the head, refusing to sink in. Help me before I lose my marbles, for I seem to be losing them. You, who possess the relevant skills, have been thrown into the dustbin. You, who gave your all at your own and family's expense, have been chucked out. Downsizing, world recession, and COVID-19 are taking their toll. You're out. It is beyond most organizations, and you have unexpectedly joined the unemployed. You have become a statistic that you never anticipated you would be. That which you used to hear and see is now right by your door. In so many phases, joblessness hits hard. Thoughts of where to start fill your mind and increase worry and anxiety. Age, outdated skills that do not match new technology seal it all. Fear of the unknown and fear of being ridiculed squeeze your mind like a vice. Who will ever look at a CV with such attributes? That job was a veneer that shielded and covered you. It took you to dizzy heights where few could match the places you visited. It pumped you up as you bragged about the high-end schools your children attended. You showed off the package of your fringe benefits to those working in public offices. Now, all that is no more. The hat you used to wear has been ripped off. Your ego has been bruised. Your confidence and self-esteem are shattered, leaving you bare, exposed, and vulnerable. Such is the nexus between joblessness and nakedness. Cheer up. Joblessness does not mean the end of you. Rather, it is the end of a season and the beginning of new beginnings. Losing that job could be a blessing in disguise as other doors open for you. So many have gone through the same path and are living better lives than before. It is time to follow your dream. Identify your passion and purpose that can sustain you. Joblessness sometimes numbs you, but at times opens opportunities you never envisaged. It requires a positive mind, a leap of faith, trust in the man above, and all will be well. Accept that the door is closed. Hey, do not waste time looking regretfully at it, lest you miss those that are opening for you. Finished. Okay.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Gertrude. Thank you. And thank you for your kind words as well. So heartwarming. The next reader on the list is Lynn Barrie.
So I've just unmuted myself. Thank you so much all for having us all here tonight, and especially Sam and Marian and your whole team. It's been actually seriously heartwarming to be involved with such an admirable project. The first poem I'm going to read is a reflection of the exhibition that we've just had. We did a combined exhibition in Harare called Burnt Offerings, and one of the paintings on our Burnt Offerings exhibition was this one behind me called Portrait Taking Flight, a reminiscence of the trials of life and the way that we overcome them. And interestingly, many of my artworks have created the urge in me to write poetry over the last few years. And this has culminated in a lot of poetry for me. When I paint something, the poem suggests it to me. So I'm going to read from the hardback cover, the hardback book, which has got this particular poem in it, which portrays this painting as well. And the title of it is Portrait Taking Flight. The power of birds, wings, and things is yours. Close your eyes, tilt your head, just breathe. Feel the lift. Soft feathers tickle tear-tracked cheeks. Kind claws scrape hurt from bruised skin. Quiet bird song soothes your ears. And I don't know if there's time to read another poem. That was very short and sweet. May I read one more?
Yes, you may.
Super. So then there was a bit of a difference from painting and then writing the poem. I actually started writing poetry before I painted, and the painting almost then became informed by the poetry. So that's a turning point that I reached in my art journey, is actually writing poetry that then informs the painting, which I find very refreshing. And actually this production and this book has helped me to realize that. Very heartwarming. So the next poem I'm going to read is called Embrace Equity. And it was a reflection of a huge painting that I did for the National Gallery for Women's Month at the beginning of this year. And that painting was called Embrace Equity. It was huge, and it was in response to a lot of loss and sadness in my life, but embracing the landscape and trees turning into figures, torsos. So I'll read it for you. Embrace equity. Equity is a state of being, unfettered by social norms, released by uplifting groundswell. Battered by circumstance, we are not equal by other standards and can never be so. But we are empowered by sacrifice, individually embraced, given tokens, granted tickets and passes to the theatre of life, each in accordance with our need. I have dreamed, I have looked to nature and traced tree trunks. I have stared into myself and summoned torsos. I have envisaged the hopefulness of the hill of Golgotha. All things connected. And that was the black and white version of the painting. So thank you for empowering me to find equity and balance in my poetry and my art. And I also love that all of our names in the anthology are listed in alphabetical order according to our Christian names, which is a wonderful affirmation of the friendship and the creativity that we share, and a wonderful way to share each other's lives. So thank you, everybody, and thank you especially Samantha and Marian.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Thank you for your beautiful words, for your beautiful poems, and for your beautiful art. Thank you so much. Okay, our next reader is Marian. So Marian, if you're ready, please do your readings.
Yes, thank you, Sam. When we were putting together our own poems that we wanted to share in the anthology, I asked Sam if I could have one for my mother, because it was my mother who taught me to write poetry. And she died unexpectedly when I was quite young. I just had my first son. So the first poem I'm going to read is for my mother, but it's also, I know there are many among you who are close to your mothers, who have lost your mothers, or whose mothers are suffering hardship. So it's really for my mother, but for all our mothers. It's called Daffodils. 40 years to the day after you died, I plant daffodils in foreign earth. You would have rebuked me for planting them so late. December already, beneath frowning northern clouds. You who were always late for everything, except that day, your flight. And the second poem I'm going to read is a poem that's structured by a mathematical sequence. I won't go into the details, but perhaps if any of you have explored my website or my poetry, you'll know that I often weave mathematical structures into my writing. So this poem is based on what's called a Fibonacci sequence, which is on a syllable count in a particular pattern. But it's also, when I was writing it, I envisaged standing on a high point at Nyanga, looking out over the valley and thinking about what lies beneath. It's called And for the Rest of Time. I don't recall my falling. One moment I was standing at the edge, admiring the view. Then my foot must have slipped on the age-smoothed rock. I tumbled into the ravine, helpless, fragmented, and alone, with no way out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marian, for your beautiful poems and the beautiful reading. The next reader is Mercy. I don't know if Mercy is here. Mercy Dhliwayo is our next poet.
Good evening. I am here. Thank you so much for this platform and for having me tonight. I am Mercy Dhliwayo from Bulawayo, but currently based in South Africa. And this evening, I'm just going to read two short poems. The first one is titled The Weight of Our Father's Names. When the new teacher asks for his name, he makes sure to say his name right. Makes sure to correct the teacher when he repeats it wrong, the way he corrects the other boys who call him wrong, or grown folks who call him something else other than his name, like boy or fana or sunny. He says a firm no, that is not my name. Then he says his name one more time, first and last name together, never forgetting the last name. His tongue wears his last name firm, as if to assert belonging. He wears his last name with pride, the pride of one who does not know the weight of his name, or the pain of being saddled with names that are often the only thing that remains when daddies forget what they leave behind. Thank you. That is the weight of a father's names. And then the next piece is a very short piece titled Dear Black Man. Dear Black Man, teach us how to write better poems of Black fathers, smiling poems. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mercy, for your beautiful poems. Thank you for the beautiful reading.
And I just say, sorry, Sam, quickly there, that for those who haven't seen the anthology yet, Mercy's poem is the one she's just read. It says what it's about. It's written as what it's about. It's an absolute joy. So thank you. Sorry, you carry on.
Okay. The next reader is Pauline. I don't know if Pauline is here. Pauline Mukondiwa.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Pauline. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pauline Mukondiwa. Thank you, Sami, and thank you, Marian, for choosing 4 out of the 8 poems that I sent you. I'm going to read Pregnant Rain. Pregnant Rain is a poem that I wrote to show the interconnectedness between the lives that we humans have and plant life. I'm a keen gardener. Pregnant rain, hiding the sun, dark and threatening. Behind clouds, silent and serene multi-screen. Deep gray, 2 light black streaks in between. Cooling thoughts of heat that had been. Clear promise heralded in its sheen. Its menacing goodness unseen. Growth beckoning, but unnoticed, cannot be forever hidden. The heavens split and splatter, tearing. Sky spits, letting go its welcome tears. Ground swallows and soaks, covering chasms and tears. Swallowed. Vanish wilted plant thirst fears. New bird songs and flora buddings. New skin tones and hair glowing. Umbilical cord, 5-course table servings. Invisible growths, but visible girth widenings. Threatening thunder of silent morning sickness hits. Intermittent lightning sharpness of 3rd trimester heat. Stepping on the hailstone of Udima feet. Paddles of a Herculean protracted labor feet. Rainbow. In quiet calm after the storm. Labor ward's pleasure of the piercing first cry. Welcome, Cyrus, Cumulus, Claudius. Rain, water table and wetlands pleasure. Blessed, beautiful multiplication. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Pauline. Thank you for the beautiful words, beautiful reading. Our next reader is Rosemary Chikafa-Chipiro. If Rose is here, you may carry on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to read one poem, which is My Butterfly. But these poems are poems that I wrote at a very difficult time in my life, when I was coming to terms with my husband having a stroke. So these are dedicated to him and myself trying to heal and trying to find meaning in everything. So I will read My Butterfly. I saw them, white and beautiful, rising from the bushes with the early morning sun, white and beautiful. I squealed with joy. Children, children, come and see white and beautiful butterflies. I saw you, white and beautiful. I jumped with joy. Let me catch you, white and beautiful, my butterfly. You flew and flew, white and beautiful. The child caught you. Your white and beautiful wings fell. I saw you lying there, my butterfly, without your wings. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose, for your beautiful, very beautiful poem. I think I'm next on the list, so I'll read two poems. The first one is called There Are No Words, and this poem is a rebellion against the notion that, I mean, we come from a society that objectifies women and expects women to lose their sensuality once they've reached a certain age, once they've had children, once, you know, women are just expected to lose their sense of sensuality, their interest in sex, or to even lose their sexual feelings. So this poem is a rebellion against that notion, because it makes a lot of women from Zimbabwe lose their sense of self because they're forced into acting in a certain way once they've reached a certain age. And this poem is just sort of a rebellion of that thinking. There are no words for how I feel lying in bed mid-morning, full of fancy and outlandish thoughts, waiting and wanting. My flattering chest makes me ill at ease about my age. And I wonder whether broken older women are allowed to be in love, to be savored like infusions of luxury loose leaves. Does fine tea taste good in crumbling teacups, like women raised by mothers reminded daily that they did not deserve love, no matter how much they gave? Like tea sweepings with base flavor, they got nothing but apathy and tried harder. They were rebels, those women, injecting more and more love into hate till they hurt in pendency. I too am a rebel, a different kind, scouring for raw love till I feel it frisking in my marrow. For what is life without love? Yet, to yearn for it so intensely feels foul and surreal to feel the wanting returned. When I think of how much I want to feel your hands on my skin, I quiz my urges. Is this love or lust? The probing of feelings ingrained in women shut down to their needs and desires, shamed all their lives for just being, like tea dust. But I am who I am, lusting, loving, being, When I think of us as one, the depth of expectancy brewing in my soul reboots my mind. A sweet evanescence repeated again and again and again. I'm spent by playing out the scenes of us together, yet my mind won't rest. I try to pen my emotions, but I fail the words as much as they fail me. And the second poem is a shorter poem. It's called Lullaby for a Sleepy Heart. This is a poem encouraging those who have given up on love not to give up on love. You have a sleepy heart that doesn't remember much about love, and a rigid waist that doesn't remember how to move. But when you face your next kiss, the 7 archangels hover over you to sing a lullaby for your sleepy heart. And as your flesh unfurls to their euphony, your spirit awakens and your tongue recalls how to dance. Thank you. Our next reader is Tariro Ndoro. If you're ready, Tariro, please go ahead.
Thank you, Sam, for that lovely poem. And thank you also for the energy that you have. I think in the past decade or so, a lot of people have noticed that Zimbabwean literature just isn't what it used to be in terms of the number of people who are publishing or the number of books that are out there. But I think Carnelian has really just done a lot to put people back on the map. And you personally have done a lot to publish people, especially people whose names aren't already famous and people who aren't already in the spotlight. So thank you for all of that work. And thank you also to Marian for the editing and everyone else who was involved in making this book what it was. I'll be reading a poem called Bodies, which is a little heavy. So I think it's 4 or 5 years ago. So this is 2019. There's one particular Sunday night in September when about 4 or 5 women were killed by their intimate partners, like in the same weekend. So I think that was the same weekend that our former president died in. It's called Bodies. It was the summer of coffins and dying. That is to say, there were posters out for Uyinene, or maybe just before that. And I remember she should never have died alone. And nobody should ever die alone. And she must not have gone gentle into the good night, because who goes peacefully when they're staring down the barrel of a gun? And it's a cruel thing to leave a body unburied and alone and exposed, and shameful so much more that a good Samaritan pointed her stolen car to a member of the SAPS, and he refused to stop and search because there was no probable cause and there was no justification or jurisdiction, but still a woman is dead that could have been alive, and no one cared enough. And it was just yesterday she was alive and in one of my classes, and I never said goodbye to her because she would live to get old and fat and wrinkled, or so I thought. And in that spring too, there was Uyinene. And we must remember he had more skeletons in his backyard, and those girls' names were never mentioned on the 8 o'clock news. And too, there is my friend who remembers the shock of bearing audio witness to a murder-suicide. One scrape of a chair against a wooden floor, 3 raised voices in the middle of the night, 2 gunshots and silence. And he must have thought it was another Columbian or something, because he sat there and waited for death to find him, and it never came. But the yellow tape on the next door told him he hadn't misheard a single thing. This is what happens when a woman tries to leave and a man decides he will not leave without her. So he takes his own life, but is too big a coward to face the afterlife alone. He takes women and children with him, and there is no one left behind to continue the family line. That is the way of things. And there is the roommate. What do you do when you hear domestic violence? When did it happen? Now, like 5 minutes ago. You mean to say it is happening now? And each time it feels asynchronous. The sun shines and someone plays music and a life is lost. And they all have names. Amanda, Uinene, Megan, roommate. Those who know death know this too. It is the true sign of grief to transcend weeping. For those who have lost, know how empty heart beats heavily. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tariro. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for your poem, the beautiful reading. Our next reader is Wadzanai. Wadzanai Tadhuvana. If you're here, Wadzanai, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you for the publishing, selecting my poems. It really means a lot. As someone who has struggled with, am I good enough? It's a validation, and thank you so much. And bless you, Sam and Marian, for all the work that you put in. Thank you so much. I'm going to read a poem titled Not Loved, Not Held. So over the past few years, I think in the past 3 years or so, a lot of my friends got married. And just hearing stories about what people go through, I thought, let me juxtapose to the vows that they make and how people feel when they get into marriage. It's not all marriages that are like that, but it's just some of the things. Yesterday I actually was not feeling well, and I went to the doctor like around 9, and this lady just started pouring out her heart about what she's going through in her marriage. So that is what such conversations inspired this poem. So here it goes. Not loved, not held. I, John Chimtashu, take you, Wadzanai, to be my wife. I promise to love you as you are, not as I want you to be. But daily I'm reminded that even a baby hippo has got nothing on me. I lost the plot when I gave birth. I promise to laugh, hug, and cuddle, no matter what life throws at us. Work, boys' night out, hustling, all the lonely nights I've spent by myself. I long to grow old with you and share all that I have with you. They are your finances, John. You constantly remind me of that. The properties are in your name. I promise to love you always, to be faithful to you, to listen to you, and to never take you for granted. John, your sisters always tell me to persevere. That is how marriage is like, to stay for the children. Inherently, monogamy is a Western concept, they tell me. I promise to protect you when you're vulnerable, to admire you when you're strong. The problem is that you want to be a man, you always tell me. I'm the father of this house, the head of the family. I promise to challenge you to be the best version of yourself, to support your dreams no matter how wild they are. Oh well, they have remained just that, wild dreams. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Wadzanai, for a beautiful reading. Our next poet is Zahirra. Zahirra, if you're ready, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted and so privileged to be here this evening. It's been wonderful listening to all your poems. As an emerging writer and also someone who's quite new to poetry, it's really a privilege to have my poems alongside yours in this beautiful anthology. So I just want to say a huge thank you to Marian and Sam for all their support of my work. So I've always wanted to be a writer. I was born and raised in Harare and Kadoma, and then I went to university in South Africa and moved to London in 2000. And it was only really during the COVID lockdown where I carved out time and space to write. And I'm working on a novel at the moment, and I think the poems that I want to read to you today really inform my writing. So what I try to do is write poems, which I then extend into short stories and then into longer forms. And so the poems I want to read to you today deal with similar themes to the novel that I'm working on. The working title of my novel is Whispering Jacarandas, and it's set in 1980s in Zimbabwe, and it centers around two sisters. So I'll read the first poem. Defrizz, demelanate, diminish. Tame those curls, iron that frizz, relax the bush, scorch it into submission. Hide from the sun, brighten it, whiten it, demelanate. Nod and smile, say yes, cross your legs until your wedding night. Clamp your mouth, temper your wild laugh, scooch to the edge. Crouch, bend, contort your bigness, cover your curves. Sit still, prettify. The roof's the limit. Tomboys and troublemakers unwanted here. And if there's time, I'd like to read one more poem. What do you mean, racist? It's in your condescending grin and the angle of your brows when you frown at me from across the room. It's in the way you turn around to check your purse when I'm behind you at the traffic lights. It's in the way you pretend to pack the shelves to keep an eye while I browse. It's in the way you hand me my towel and single me out to check my gym card. It's in the way your eyes land on me when I enter your space, and the way your smile doesn't stretch across your face. It's in the way my presence irks you and the way you despise me before I've opened my mouth. It's a seed planted and nurtured in you over generations. It's nothing I can pinpoint or articulate. I only know the churning in my gut and bones. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for beautiful readings. So those were the poets who were on our list. But if we have anyone, in the event who's a contributing poet who has been inspired to give us an impromptu reading, feel free to just raise your hand and read. So if there's any Tesserae poet in the in this event who wants to read, who's not on the list, feel free to raise your hand and you can read if you want to. If we've got no one else who wants to read, that's fine. We will now ask the audience. We will now ask the audience to ask questions. If there's anyone who's been watching and listening to the poems who wants to ask a question, you can ask it to sort of all of us, and if anyone wants to answer, they can sort of jump in, or you can direct it to a particular poet if you want. Yeah, so please feel free to ask questions. Do we have anyone?
I can see one or two poets who are here. I just want to say what a joy it's been to hear these poems being read by the actual poets, because of course Sam and I read them and we read them on the page, but when I hear you reading your own work, it comes alive in a different way. And I can see that there are one or two poets who are sitting here who haven't read their work. I would love to hear you. if you want to say in the chat or unmute yourselves, or even just talk about your poetry. No, then I do have I have a question for Sam, because Sam has done quite extraordinary work. She has published Tesserae, she has published, I don't know how many books, other books this year. My question, Sam, is when do you sleep? And I know the answer.
Ooh. I don't know if I sleep. Go Marian. Oh, do you know what? It's I haven't been looking after myself, as well as I should. And I think I owe it to everyone probably to sort of slow down and sleep sometimes. Yeah, the last few months have been really busy. They've been really busy, and I'm producing books. I've also started painting, and I'm doing a lot of things at the same time. And I think I'm a prolific artist, and once I start working on a project, I just find it really, really difficult to shut down. So yeah, it's something I need to work on, and it involves slowing down. But yeah, it's really difficult, especially when it's been really hard to kind of gain the, I don't know if attention is the right word, trying to publicize what I do, at Carnelian, trying to market the books, trying to market the work. It's been really difficult. As a small independent press, most people don't take you seriously until you've been in the game for a long time. And I've had to work extremely hard to publicize Carnelian. And I kind of feel like I'm only just beginning to get that attention. And despite being exhausted, I feel like I can't go to sleep now. Because the attention I've been looking for is now here. So I kind of need to stay awake and just ride on it. So yeah, I do need to sleep more. I do need to do less. But I think because it's been really, really hard to get here, and I'm suddenly getting the sort of I'm being offered to attend things, events, to feature on other people's platforms, and it feels like, oh my gosh, finally something's happening. And I feel like if I take a break now, then I'll just let everybody else down. Everyone I've been working so hard to promote and elevate, I just feel like now's not the time to go to sleep. So yeah,
that's very inspiring.
Sam, there's a question in the chat asking what the origin of this project was, of the book. Someone put in the chat a question for you, or for both of you actually.
Well, shall I go for it, or do you want to take it, Marian? I don't know.
Well, you were the one who contacted me.
So okay.
Extraordinary idea. So you carry on.
I was just trying to find the actual question so I could answer it properly, but I'll just take Phil's
I'll read it. It says, to Sam and Marian, how did this project come about? And it's from Kay, who's here.
Okay, so I'm the founder of Carnelian Heart, a small indie press, and one of the things I do through Carnelian is to raise awareness, to try and elevate Zimbabwean writers by giving them a platform. to publish their work, to share their work. So Tesserae is the third anthology that I've compiled at Carnelian. The first one was a collection of an anthology of short stories by Zimbabwean women. Then I've done an anthology of short stories again by Zimbabweans in the diaspora. So being a poet myself, I've always known that I will need to compile an anthology of poems. But I've so much on my plate. There's just so much work for me to do. So I was kind of maybe I don't know if procrastinating is the right word, but I was waiting for the right time to do the poetry project. So earlier this year, my own book, Starfish Blossoms, won the NAMA, the National Arts Merits Award in Zimbabwe for outstanding poetry book. And at the time that I won the award, I could see that I was suddenly getting, my work was getting attention. I got some publicity, and I suddenly thought, okay, I think this is the right time to do that poetry anthology, because I do the anthologies to amplify voices of upcoming Zimbabwean writers and some established ones. I just do it for the love of literature, and also just to elevate everyone else. So when I won the NAMA, for me, that was I was like, this is it. This is the moment, because I won this award, I think I need to do the anthology now so that I can take everyone else with me on this, I don't know, sort of pedestal, if you want to call it that. It was like there was attention, and I just thought, right, for all the women, especially because women seem to struggle more than men to get their work out there, to be taken seriously. And there are all sorts of reasons behind that. Some women are mothers, and so they're busy looking after children. They don't even have the time to write. Some, even if they're not mothers, still we've got other responsibilities, in society, in our personal lives. It's just harder for women to find the time. And even when they find the time, sometimes there are no platforms that take them seriously. Sometimes they're expected to make sacrifices that I won't get into. It's just hard for women to be taken seriously. So I wanted to make Tesserae a project for Zimbabwean women poets. And also, the other thing is I had been looking for poetry anthologies by Zimbabwean, well, just by Zimbabweans, and it was so obvious to see that they just, I think there are people doing projects back home, but due to publishing challenges, you can't find those books unless you're in Zimbabwe. You can probably find them in a local Zimbabwean bookstore, but if you go on Amazon right now, or even if you Google, Zimbabwe poetry anthology, there's barely anything, there's nothing. And when I specifically looked for an anthology by Zimbabwean women, I only found one that is out of print. I think it's Sunflowers in Your Eyes or something, the one where Ethel contributed and Fungai Machiri contributed to as well. There were 4 women in that anthology, very beautiful poems, but it's out of print now, and it was done over a decade ago, maybe even more than a decade ago. So it just inspired me to do something about that, because it just didn't feel right that there are so many poets, there's so many women who are writing, and their work is inaccessible. So I wanted to make the work of Zimbabwean women poets more accessible. Another thing as well I find is I've recently started, well, not recently, but in the last few months, I go to events to sell books. I can go to my local market, or if there's something going on and I'm invited, I'll just take my little foldable table, a few books, and I'll go and sell books. And a few people, especially when I'm at a non-Zimbabwean event, they'll come and say to me, "Oh, I've never read a book from Zimbabwe before. I'm interested in reading about Africa, or I'm interested, but I've never read anything by a Zimbabwean writer, and so I've been told that so many times. Last weekend I was in Manchester at the Black British Book Festival, and there were so many Black people there who want to read Black literature, who want to read African literature, But I heard that comment so many times again that, you know, wow, I don't think I've ever seen a book from Zimbabwe before. I don't think I've ever read a book written by a Zimbabwean. And so it just kind of goes to show that there's probably not enough literature getting into the world from Zimbabwe. I think there are a lot of people who are writing, but their work isn't reaching the people who were interested in reading that literature. And I know that, you know, back home, which is precisely why I decided to start, you know, to open the services at Carnelian to Zimbabwean writers, is because the publishing industry back home is just not where it needs to be. You know, I know that there are people who are publishing books, who are printing books, who are doing all sorts to try and do something about this problem, but a lot of these books are not leaving the country; they're just staying in Zim, and yet there are so many people out there who want to read Zimbabwean literature. So, yeah. So I think, to answer your question, many reasons, but I think for Tesserae specifically, it was just that it was going to happen sooner or later. It was just a question of when. But I just felt that because my work was sort of being spotlighted this year because I won an award, I thought, right, I think this is the right time to kind of take everyone else with me so we can share the the spotlight together. That was the reason.
Thanks very much for that, Sam. We've got a few more questions in the chat now, and I think, Gertrude, have you got a question as well? So there's a question for Mercy, and then a question from Mercy to Rosemary, and then a question from Goddess for both of us. So perhaps, Mercy, would you like to answer Kay's question first? Can you share a thought or two on fatherhood? Your poems are beautiful and on some level disheartening.
Thank you for those questions. It's kind of difficult to share a thought on fatherhood, seeing that I myself am a mother. I don't know anything about fatherhood, but I know that us as mothers, we don't have the option of being absent mothers. Well, some have, but as mothers, no matter how hard times are, you're forced to be there. You don't have the option of upping and leaving. So a lot of my poems about fathers, okay, actually, I've never been able to speak about my own father on social media or write about him, but I speak a lot about my mother. I write about her, beautiful poems, but I feel like a lot of Black people are not able to speak beautiful things about the fathers. It's all a story of absent fathers. So my poetry is more of an appeal to the younger generation of men, my friends, my brothers. Like, there is a better narrative we can write about our fathers, but it starts from you. You know how it was like growing up with an absent father. Why don't you be the change? Why don't you be the father that we all wanted when we were growing up? So that's what my poetry tries to do when we write about fathers. We want to write better poems about our fathers, but when I write honestly. So it's just an appeal to men, like, help us, meet us halfway. Make it easier for us to paint better pictures of you as Black men. So that's currently like what my poetry is about. It's more like advocacy. So it's mostly me talking to the younger Black men who are still yet to become fathers and those who are already fathers. That's what I can say mostly about fatherhood.
Thank you. That was really interesting, Mercy. And now you have a question for Rosemary. Do you want to read it yourself, or should I read it?
May you please read it?
I'll read it. Rosemary, you mentioned that your poem was inspired by your husband's situation. How do you manage to write about personal circumstances without being so obvious about it? The way you beautifully did it in your own. I guess it's a question open to any other poet. Lovely question.
Well, It's a good question, but I also think it's hard, because what happens with me, I don't like deliberately write to try and show my personal circumstances, but I think it's something that just happens, or it's the way I perceive things. It's just about my worldview and my sense of imagination. Like in this instance, it was kind of like a diary writing experience where I'm trying to look deep inside me and understand what is happening in my personal life and understand the kind of feelings. It's me trying to understand how I feel about what was happening. So I think it's just something that just comes out. I don't really outrightly intend it. It's something that just happens. So I don't know if it's dependent on an individual's creative process. But for me, it was just therapeutic to just put pen to paper in trying to express my feelings and to understand my circumstances.
Thank you, Rosemary. I think we have different ways of processing our feelings, and some of us are more indirect and others are perhaps more direct. I want to come back to a question. There are still some more questions coming through, which is lovely, but I'd like to come back to the question of Goddess. Did you two learn anything new about the lives of women in Zim and from Zim through your readings of the poetry in this collection? I'll answer for myself. I left Zim in 1975. Well, it obviously wasn't Zim then. And although I have been back a few times, I no longer have any family living there. So it's been over 20 years since I was last physically in the country. I've been emotionally in the country very much, of course, during that time. When I first started reading the poems, when we were working on this project, and I first started the readings that came in, what struck me most of all was the distinctive and individual voice of each and every one of you. Because I have very little experience of recent Zimbabwean poetry, which is why I started investigating and researching Carnelian Heart and then came into contact with Sam. But I think a lot of our Western poetry writes from a kind of similar background, a similar thought frame, which can disguise the honesty of what we're feeling. So what struck me in your poetry is, first of all, the individuality, the distinctiveness of your voices. Every one of you, I could read a poem and I would say, you know, that was by one of you, that was by somebody else. They're all so different. Also your honesty and your pragmatism, how you deal, how you face some of the situations you faced. There are really powerful poems in here that deal with loss, with grief, with physical violence, but there are also poems that deal with family, with childbearing. There are also poems that celebrate fatherhood and love, some beautiful ones. So I think who was asking that, was that David? Yes, there are poems that celebrate fatherhood too. But it was this really facing life square on, which struck me most of all. And the writing from very deep places, often very courageous places, talking about traditions and taboos that are being broken in your writing. I found that incredibly moving and quite extraordinary. And now when I was reading again this afternoon through some of the poems in this anthology, I found myself almost in tears because of the power of your narratives, the genuine power of your narratives, that you are not writing from stories you've read in the newspaper, but from stories you've actually experienced, from the whole experience of life. And this, I think, is something that really needs to be celebrated and amplified. And congratulations to Sam for having the vision and the energy and the ability to get by on 1 hour's sleep a night to bring this together. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Sam.
No, I think you've covered it all, Marian. Maybe just to add a small point. I mean, as an editor, I usually, as an editor of Zimbabwean emerging writers, one thing I usually come across is that sometimes authors, especially those who are based in the country, are very what can I say, sort of sensitive to, or maybe should I say they worry about censorship. So they'll hold back. And so sometimes as I'm reading something, I can tell that there's something more beautiful that's just about to come, but it's not quite coming out because this person is worried or scared that, they might say the wrong thing, they might offend somebody. But I didn't really get that with this anthology of poems. And that was so beautiful. It was lovely. It was liberating. When you read works that are, authentic expressions of self, it liberates you as well. And, I just, despite saying some very sad poems and some sort of heart-wrenching ones, it was still, the way they were delivered was so, it was amazing. Like, I just, I read through the poems and I would just smile or cry. But, and that shows that, these poems were coming from a deep place, and they were coming from a place of honesty and sort of connection with the writers are clearly connected with their true selves. And that was just refreshing for me because, yeah, sometimes I have to sort of battle with writers to kind of try and get the real meat out of their work. So it was lovely to not have to do that for this anthology. I think, it was just amazing to see people sort of being in touch, the writers being in touch with their souls. It was good. It was good. I loved it.
Yes, and I just like to add again that I've learned so much from all of you. I really have, and I feel that that this whole process has helped to make me consider my own poetry in a different way. So we have a question from Gertrude, and I don't know if there are any other questions, but perhaps if no one else has a question, should we make Gertrude's question the last question and then wrap up? Thanks, Gertrude.
Oh, thank you so much for giving me this time. Thank you so much for giving me this time. Wow. Poets, you're doing a fantastic job. This is just a comment. I'm so happy. The poetry is so deep. It's so refreshing and at times touching, very touching. Thanks for sharing, your work. And to you, Samantha, thanks for giving us an insight into what has been happening behind the scenes. When you respond to us, write to us, you think, oh, everything is easygoing. Yet it looks like there is so much that you put into it. I admire your tenacity, your love, your passion. It's wonderful. It's something that I've just learned from you. And I've taken a leaf from it that, once you want to do something that you put so much love for, give it the all. Give it the all. It's not something that you just have to do haphazardly. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And poets, keep up the good work. This is my first time to enter into any competition, and I'm one of you. And it was so refreshing for me to learn from other poets. It's not about writing long stories. That's what I believed was, what poem, because that's what I used to see in the Shona poems that I used to read back home. A page and a half of one thing. But now it looks it looks like even those 4 sentences, they are so deep with meaning and deep thoughts, which is really, really wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I can't thank you again. And you guys, you girls, no, you're not guys, I'm sorry. You girls, you deserve it all. I appreciate you. I appreciate you so much. Keep up the good work, and I hope to work with you in the future. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for your kind words, Gertrude. Thank you. So, I don't know if we have any more, Marian, any more comments or questions to address?
No, I think to those who haven't read the anthology yet, contributing poets, you'll be getting your copies if you don't already have them. For others, I hope this has given you a flavor of what to expect, and please buy it, share it, send it out for review, because these voices really deserve to be amplified and celebrated. So thank you all very much for coming along. Should we finish with just a round of applause, and then Phil, perhaps you can stop recording and we can close off. So if you all unmute yourself, applaud these wonderful poets.
And just to add a small point, we are continuing with the throughout the weekend. So tomorrow we're on Twitter, 7 p.m. UK time, 8 p.m. Zim time, just like today. So please join us. We'll have a different set of readers reading different poems. So yes, if you still have that thirst for poetry, join us tomorrow on Twitter, or is it X now? And on Sunday, we are on Instagram. Instagram Live, again, 7 p.m. UK time, 8 p.m. Zim time. So yes, join us tomorrow and on Sunday. And thank you so much for coming through and for supporting this. It's been a lovely, lovely journey. And I'm so happy. I'm celebrating. Congratulations. The book is out. I hope you buy it. Please ask your friends and family and colleagues to buy the book as well. You will learn a lot from 37 different voices. It's definitely worth buying. Thank you so much.